Today we are working on our math lesson. We are starting to learn about telling time. You will need this worksheet or this math paper. It has 13-1 up at the top. It's got a picture of a clock and some dogs helping out with the clock. So go ahead and get that paper ready. That's what we're going to be using today. And while we're doing that, we're going to get started with our math movie down here.
The shorthand is the hour hand. The hour hand shows the hour. What color is the hour hand on this clock? The hour hand is blue. What number is the hour hand pointing to?
So when we take a look at this clock here, first of all, when we look at our clock, it has 12 numbers on it, and they always are in the same order. So usually we start at the top when we look at our clock, and that's where 12 is, but that's actually the last number if we are going in order. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. This is called the clock face. In between each of these numbers are little lines here. And there's 5 of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 is when we get to the next number. There are 5 minutes that go by in between each number, and that's what that stands for. Right now they're telling us about the hour hand. On a clock, the hour hand is the short hand or the smaller one. And when it's pointing to one of these numbers, it tells us what hour it is. So right now, the little blue hand is pointing to the 3.
The hour hand points to the 3. The long hand is the minute hand. What color is the minute hand on this clock? The minute hand is red. How can you tell the minute hand from the hour hand? The minute hand is longer. The hour hand is shorter. What number is the minute hand pointing to?
So on this clock, we see the minute hand is red, and it's longer than the hour hand. It's pointing to the 12.
The minute hand points to the 12. The dog knows that there are 60 minutes in an hour. Do you know the special word to use when the minute hand points to the 12? Think about it.
Okay, so they just told us 2 important things here. The first one is that there's 60 minutes in an hour. Each of these little lines on the clock, if we count them all the way around, we will get to 60. So the minute hand will move to each of these lines every minute. And once it goes all the way around the clock after 60 minutes, this shorthand, this hour hand, will point down to the 4. That's my phone ringing. So an hour will have gone by. All right. What they want to know right now is, what do we say when the big hand, the minute hand, is pointing to the 12? Well, we say o'clock. So right now it is 3 o'clock.
When the minute hand points to 12, we say o'clock. Why does a clock need 2 hands? Think about it.
We already know this answer. One hand tells us the hour, the other hand tells us the minutes. So we know what the hour is and how many minutes have gone by.
One shows the hour and the other shows the minutes. How do you know what time the clock shows? The hour hand points to the 3, so the hour is 3. The minute hand points to the 12, so you say o'clock. When you put them together, you say 3 o'clock. Now you know about the hour and minute hands on a clock.
Okay, so before we get started with any of that, I have given you all some clocks. Now, I have this big clock here, so it's kind of hard for me to film it and be able to move it at the same time. But I gave each of you in the bags that I dropped off at your houses last week a smaller clock that looks kind of like this. And you can see it has the same numbers all clocks do, going around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It has two hands. This longer hand is the minute hand, and this smaller hand or shorter hand is the hour hand. And you can move them on your clocks. So if you want to take some time later and practice moving your clocks and telling different times, that's a great way to learn about your clock. But today we are going to be doing our worksheet together, and we'll be filling in some different parts of the clock. So I want you to have your worksheet ready and have a pencil ready and take a look. We're going to work on the front part together. So for number 1, where it says blank o'clock, I want you to fill in a 2 on the line. So everybody right now, go ahead and write a number 2 on the line. So now it will say 2 o'clock. But there's a problem, because this clock on our paper doesn't have an hour hand and doesn't have a minute hand. We're going to fix that problem right now because you are going to draw them. So you are going to draw your hour hand pointing to the 2. That's a short one, so don't make it so big, make it shorter. And your minute hand pointing to the 12. This is the longer hand, so make sure it goes all the way up and touches that number 12. So on your paper for number 1, you're going to draw the hands on the clock, or the lines, to show me a short hand pointing to the 2 and a long hand pointing to the 12. Go ahead and do it now on your paper for number 1. Okay, remember, it doesn't have to be perfect. They can just be lines. Now move over to number 2 on your paper, right over here. On the line, we are going to write a 7. So everybody write a 7 on the line for number 2. So now it says 7 o'clock. Well, we need to make our clock say 7 o'clock. So we're going to make the hour hand pointing at the 7 and the minute hand pointing at the 12. So when you draw it on your paper, make sure the shorter hand is pointing at the 7 and the longer hand is pointing at the 12. So now when we look at your clock, it will say 7 o'clock. Go ahead and draw it on your paper for number 2. Okay, and when you're ready, move down to number 3. On number 3 on your paper, I want you to write a 10 on the line. 1, 0. Write a 10 on the line. So now for number 3, it should say 10 o'clock. We need to make this clock say 10 o'clock by drawing the lines. So we are going to draw our hour hand, the short one, pointing to the 10, and our minute hand, the long one, pointing to the 12. Make sure you have the short hand pointing to the 10 and the long hand pointing to the 12. Now it says 10 o'clock. And the last one on the front for number 4, I want you to write a 1 on the line. So everybody write number 1. And it will say 1 o'clock. On your clock, we need to draw the lines, the minute hand and the hour hand, to make it say 1 o'clock. So the shorthand, the hour hand, is going to point to the 1. And the long hand, the minute hand, is going to point to the 12. Then we can say 1 o'clock. Try to draw your hand, your shorthand pointing to the 1, and make sure it's shorter or smaller than your minute hand pointing to the 12. And when you're ready, open up your paper to the inside. All right, on the inside of your paper, we'll do a few together and you'll do some on your own. Starting with number 1, our practice problem up here. I look at the clock. The shorthand, the hour hand, is pointing to the 4. The long hand, the minute hand, is pointing to the 12. So when I read this clock, I would say 4 o'clock. On the line, they have already given us the word o'clock, so all we need to do is trace the number 4. Go next door to number 2. When I look at the picture, I see that the hour hand is pointing to the 9 and the minute hand is pointing to the 12. I read this as 9 o'clock. So on the line, we are going to write 9 o'clock. We're not writing 12. Sometimes people get confused and think because it's pointing to a 12, we need to write that number. We do not need to write that. This o'clock tells us that it's pointing to the 12. So all we need to write on the line is a 9, 9 o'clock. Go next door to number 3. Look at the clock first. The little hand is pointing to the 3. The big hand is pointing to the 12. To read this clock, I would say 3 o'clock. On the line, you are going to write a 3. You can do 4, 5, and 6 at the bottom on your own. Remember, whatever number the shorthand is pointing to is the number that you are writing on the line. So look at your shorthand. Whatever number it points to is the number you are writing. Go ahead and do that now, and then we'll go over them. Okay, check it out. You should have a 7 on the line. 7 o'clock for number 4. Number 5, the hour hand is pointing to the 5. You should write a 5 on the line. 5 o'clock for number 5. And for number 6, the hour hand is pointing to 8. You should have an 8 on the line. 8 o'clock. If you need to fix any of those, pause the video and go ahead and fix them. We are going to move over to the other side. This is a little bit different. This is what we were doing on the front of the page where we need to draw the clock hands to show the time. So I'm going to use both the paper and my clock behind it. You are going to draw the clock hands. It helps if you make a little dot in the middle of each clock to kind of show you where to start your lines, and they don't have it for us there, so if you want to do that first, you can. Doesn't need to be anything special, just a little dot. All right, so start with number 7, 10 o'clock. In order to make this say 10 o'clock, we need to have the hour hand pointing to the 10, and the minute hand pointing to the 12. So when you draw your lines, you are going to draw a short hand pointing to 10 and a long hand pointing to 12. Go ahead and do that for number 7. When you're ready, go next door to number 8. Number 8 says 2 o'clock. This time we're going to draw the short hand or the hour hand pointing to the 2. And the minute hand, the long hand, pointing to the 12. So this clock says 2 o'clock. Go ahead and draw it on your paper. Make your clock look like the clock on the screen, 2 o'clock. Go next door to number 9. Number 9 says 11 o'clock. We are going to draw the clock on the paper to look like this. Short hand pointing to 11, tall hand pointing to 12. So we have 11 o'clock. Draw it on your paper. Go down to the bottom to number 10. Number 10 says 12 o'clock. Now for 12 o'clock, both hands need to be pointing to the 12. The little hand points to 12 and the big hand points to 12. Just draw me 2 lines, a short line and a long line or a tall line pointing to 12. 12 o'clock. Go next door to number 11, 6 o'clock. This time, the hour hand, the short hand, has to go down to the 6. And the tall hand, the minute hand, has to stay at the 12. So it looks like this, a short hand going down to the 6, and a tall hand going up to the 12. And our last one on this side, number 12, says 1 o'clock. Our hour hand has to point to 1, and our minute hand has to point to 12. 1 o'clock. Go ahead and draw it on your paper. Okay, good work. Please go to, go to the bottom of your paper. I almost forgot about that part. It says write the time that is in between. In between means in the middle. So we have 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock. What would come in the middle of those two numbers, 8 and 10? Well, if I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 9 comes in the middle of 8 and 10. So on the line, we are going to write 9 because 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. 9 o'clock comes in the middle of 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock. So everybody write a 9 on the line. Then turn to the back page. Number 14 says Sarah wakes up at 7 o'clock. Draw the hands on the clock to show 7 o'clock. You try it. The short hand should be pointing to the 7 and the tall hand should be pointing to the 12. So your clock will say 7 o'clock. If I make my clock look like that, this is what yours should look like on your paper also, 7 o'clock. Okay, go down below to number 15. Bill likes to read at 4 o'clock every day. Which clock shows the time Bill reads? So which one of these clocks shows 4 o'clock? The shorthand should be pointing to the 4, and the longhand should be pointing to the 12. You should be looking at letter C, 4 o'clock. Go ahead and fill it in on your paper. And down at the bottom, you are doing 16 on your own. It says write 2 activities you like to do and draw a clock to show what time you do them. So maybe you watch SpongeBob every day at 4 o'clock. So you might draw me a picture of SpongeBob and then next to it a clock that's pointing to 4 o'clock. Maybe you like to go for a bike ride in the morning at 9 o'clock. So you can draw somebody riding a bike and then a clock with 9 o'clock. Maybe your favorite part of the day is eating ice cream and you do that at 7 o'clock. You can draw me an ice cream cone with 7 o'clock next to it. You pick something that you like to do during the day, draw a picture, and write a time next to it.